Hello, my loves. Welcome to Pain to Joy. My name is Danielle Sutty, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me today. How is your heart today? I will admit that my heart is feeling more hopeful than it has in a very long time. And before I get into the why, I'm going to place one hand on my heart, and if my hand wasn't holding my phone, I would place the other one on my lower belly. Feel free to join me if it's safe and comfortable and it feels good for you to do so. And I'm going to invite you to take a long exhale into the low belly. And an even longer exhale out the mouth. Exhaling all that no longer serves and perhaps never did. And before I move into what my heart feels called to share today, I do feel it prudent to say that in no way is this podcast or any podcast that I have done or will ever do is advice or medical advice. And you should absolutely always contact your doctor, your healthcare providers, and the experts whenever you are looking at changing up your wellness program, things that work for you, things that don't work for you. And I share this because I've had a shift in how I am approaching my wellness trajectory forward. And what's really wonderful is, in previous episodes, I have said, pay attention to the synchronicities in your life. And if the word synchronicity doesn't resonate, we could also think of them as patterns. And so I see hearts everywhere I go. That's something that I've trained my brain to see. And sometimes it's a little bit more tricky when we're looking at patterns in our lives, in our emotional lives, in our wellness, in our health lives. And this weekend I was able to see a pattern. And I'm so thankful. And it didn't come because I was looking for a pattern. What had happened was I had seen both of my new physios last week, one with the focus on concussion recovery and the other with a focus on my knee that had recently been acting up pain-wise. But it became clear on Friday that we're not terribly concerned about my knee because it's actually the condition that I experience called central sensitization, that my central nervous system is ramped up, that my vestibular system is ramped up, that my pain system, it's all ramped up. And so we were chatting a little bit about that, and the physio pulled out an assessment survey type thing that I have done many times before. And I said to her, I've done that so many times before. And she worked through it with me, and she realized that yes, I had gone through it, and that there wasn't value in moving forward because I believe the assessment comes from or is related to a book by David Butler and Laura Mosley called Explain Pain. And Explain Pain is an incredible book that helps anyone and everyone understand how pain works. And it was a very handy tool for me to have. And it was great to revisit that because over the weekend I was able to look at some things that I learned a long time ago that I need to look at again and relearn. But something else that was really wonderful that came from that appointment was that Friday night I thought to myself, here's this amazing physio who is really interested in central sensitization. She did a lunch and learn a few weeks back with a physio I saw originally who is an expert in the area. And I thought, if he was my physio and we can still be in contact, why would I not go to the source? Why would I not go and speak to him? And the reason being is he's someone who does a lot of research in the area, and he knows my case. Even though it was years ago, he knows me really well. And I just felt like, is there a possibility for me to see him in the real and pick his brain? And funnily enough, I have not been connected on LinkedIn for a very long time. And a few months back, my older brother had made a joke about how my LinkedIn wasn't up to date. And at first, being a younger sister, I thought, it's just my brother bugging me. But then over time, I realized that I should update it and add that I have a podcast and use it as a networking tool moving forward. So thank you to my big bro. And that is somewhere where in the last few weeks, I thought to connect to this former physio of mine. So because we're now connected, on Friday night, I started writing him a message, and I didn't write it in the platform. I was writing it in my notes app. And what became very clear as I was writing, I was trying to update him on the last few years of my life. I haven't seen him in quite a long time. And I discovered a pattern. And although it was disheartening in the moment, I am so thrilled that all of the pieces of the puzzle in the last few months of the pain and the migraines and the pain flares in the last few weeks, because I've gone back to these physios and because I'm doing the vestibular brain retraining exercises and because I had a flare after my leg overreacted to one of my treatments, all of it led me to reconnect with his incredible physio. And as I'm writing on Friday night, I'm talking to text into my phone, I discover that since I've been out in the world, so for example, I've been recovering on and off at home since 2015, since the fall of 2015, when I had some testing for the court case, which involved cognitive testing, physical testing, psychological testing. And by the last week of November, I had a couple of dates. My brain kind of just shut down. And from then it took years to come back from that. And finally, in the fall of 2019, I felt strong enough to wean myself off of my medication because that medication would not allow me to travel internationally. I went to see a different physio, someone new. He helped me create an exercise program at home. He helped stretch my neck because that's something that gets tight when I try to do more things. And by the spring of 2020, I had weaned myself off of the medication in order to travel. And as we know, the world shut down and it was a quiet time. So 2020 and 2021, there wasn't a lot of big parties to go to, big gatherings. And if I was meeting with people, it was often outside, which is less loud, which is less stimulating. And so the first time I really was living life outside of my home in a boisterous way was in the summer of 2022. I was in Italy. For years and years and years, I wanted to go back to Italy. I wanted to live in Italy. I wanted to study Italian. I had done it in the past, but I really wanted to just go and improve my Italian over a 5 or 6 week period. I loved living in Florence so much that I stayed for 3 months. However, as I looked back at the notes that I was writing for my physio that I will see in the next few weeks, I realized that since July of 2022, any time that I try to get back out into the world and do sustained social activity or go to Italian class a few times a week or see people or be in boisterous environments like a grocery store, which probably doesn't sound boisterous to you, or just being amongst society, not enclosed in my home or in my little room in my apartment with a bunch of other people from all over the world, which was amazing. In Italy, I have had repeated flares, flare after flare after flare. So actually, the pattern is that I have not had sustained, prolonged wellness ever since I got back out into the world. And when I do have a bunch of migraines and I do have a bunch of flares and a bunch of symptoms, which often can feel like severe anxiety, a storm in my brain, I do the things that work. I stay in a dark room. I stay quiet. I don't see people for weeks on end, but that's not working anymore. So that's why I wanted to see this expert physio, and I'm incredibly thankful that I was able to see this pattern. And so I'm curious, if you were to look at your own life, are there patterns of wellness or unwellness? Are there patterns of behavior? Are there patterns of things that have happened within your relationships that you could look at if you connected the dots moving backwards? If you said, oh, if I look at the last 5 years, the last 10 years, the last year, what's been going on in my life? What's working? and what doesn't. Because upon having seen that pattern, which was on Friday night, and then I had a very challenging Saturday and a very challenging Sunday, and I was up late on Sunday night and I couldn't sleep and I was feeling unwell, and I remembered what someone I love said to me. They said, maybe you should consider reading the end of that book. And the book that I'm referring to is a book that I've mentioned in past episodes, Run Towards the Danger by Sarah Polley. And I had stopped reading the last chapter because I had seen on a late night talk show video clip on YouTube that she went to a program in the United States and she got all better. And that triggered me because I had a concussion that was never diagnosed back in 2010. I also experienced something called central sensitization, where my central nervous system is on high alert, and post-herpetic neuralgia, which is nerve pain and uncomfortableness after having had shingles, or the shings as I affectionately call them, a few years back. But because I couldn't sleep and because I was a bit at wit's end, I thought, I'm going to read the end of this book. And thank goodness I did. She describes her hesitation. She doesn't know if she's even well enough to go down to the United States to see this Dr. Michael Collins, who has a program that she heard about from other people who she saw recover from concussion in incredible ways. And just like the title of the book, Run Towards the Danger, that was the one piece that has been missing from my recovery for years. And after seeing my physio this morning, who specializes in vestibular rehabilitation and concussions, she was saying that yes, for years and years, the recommendations and best practice was to rest, be in a dark room, take it easy. And so I realized in reading this book, it was just a snapshot of Sarah Polley's experience where she had multiple assessments that day with different healthcare practitioners. But my big takeaway was that the doctor basically yells at her, explains to her the 2 different types of concussion out of 6 that she has, and that anxiety can play a role, and leads people with post-concussion syndrome to avoid the activities that bring on symptoms, which I will say makes sense. If you touch a hot element and it burns your hand, you're not going to keep touching the hot element. If you're in a rambunctious environment and it makes you feel unwell, then you're going to avoid those environments. But the way that Dr. Michael Collins and many of the clinics in the United States, and hopefully here now in Canada, are addressing concussion recovery is that you, quote, run towards the danger. And so I have already been doing some of the exercises that Sarah Polley mentions, vestibular exercises. So if you think vestibular is like your inner ear, your balance, but it also goes deeper into your brain. I was already increasing my exercise. I was already doing many of the things that she's told to do for 4 to 6 weeks before she comes back to see the doctor again. But the piece that I wasn't doing was running towards the danger. The piece that I have been avoiding for the past few months because I was feeling so awful and I was in so much pain and sleeping so much was being around people, being in environments that are overstimulating. And so right then and there, I decided, after having learned many of the things that Sarah Polley is invited and asked to do by this doctor and the practitioners, I learned a lot of them. And I learned a little bit more the following day. I listened to a few podcasts that Dr. Michael Collins was on. And he mentioned someone in one of the podcasts that had similar symptoms to me that was only a couple of years out from their accident and injury. But from that, I gleaned how to make a program for myself that has me being measured with things like my return to driving. So for example, I'm going to drive at minimum 3 times the first week, which was last week, 10 minutes each way. This week, I will drive minimum 3 times, 12 minutes each way. Next week, 15 minutes, and so on and so forth, because I had some incredible symptom increase with driving long distances about 2 months back that set me back. But otherwise, I am walking 40 minutes every day in the morning. I am doing a workout that I have been doing every other day, but I'm doing it every day later in the afternoon or in the early evening. I am doing my vestibular exercises that I was already doing. I'm doing one neck exercise to strengthen my neck. And I am putting myself in environments that increase my symptoms. And the best part is, I heard something that I've either never heard before or I don't recall ever being told. Dr. Michael Collins was explaining about how the vestibular system is so intrinsically linked with the nervous system. And so, for example, there are times when if I'm in an environment where there's a lot of people or it's loud or there's screaming children or there's lots happening, I feel as though I have the worst anxiety ever. I feel like I could scream. But instead of taking a brain break, lying in a quiet room, going home and sleeping, the idea is you leave the environment, you take a brisk walk, or you do dynamic exercises. That just means movement exercises, and you return to the stimulating environment. I heard him explain that that is actually how you retrain and heal the vestibular system. And because I have been trying for years, and I feel as though I have done everything that I was told, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I've created my own program, again, having gone to the chronic pain clinic years ago and learned different things, having vestibular exercises that the physio gave me a few weeks back. I'm going to bed at the same time every night and getting up at the same time every morning. I have never in my adult life, even when I was doing sleep retraining for months at the chronic pain clinic, I have never gone to bed at the same time every night, lights out at the same time every night, and gotten up at the same time ever in my life for more than 2 days in a row, and I am on day 10. So things that he mentions, which again, none of this is recommended, none of this is my advice, none of this is advice, but if you were to find him and listen to some of these podcasts, go and see him in the real. The idea is sleep at the same time every night. 3 meals a day, preferably at the same time. Making sure you're hydrating, staying nourished. Doing a walk in the morning. Doing a vigorous exercise routine in the afternoon or evening. Doing the vestibular exercises. And in this moment, I can't think of what else, but I have made myself a poster and it says, "Get my life back." And in Sarah Polley's case, I mentioned she had 2 of the 6 kinds of concussion. I have 6, so I am not presuming that I am going to miraculously increase my wellness in a 6-week period. She did, by the way, and I'm thrilled for her. So I have created a 30, 60, 90-day plan. Things that I am optimistic I will be able to do at the 30-day, 60-day, 90-day mark. I spent hours last week writing down driving distances to my friends' homes, driving distances to my healthcare providers, driving distances to different parks and cafes and places in the city, doing the legwork in advance so that when I say, oh, this week I'm driving 15 minutes. What's 15 minutes from here? I can just look at the poster and look at the little Post-it notes. And that's something that's really exciting. When you are embarking on something new, a new fitness program, a new way of life, new habits, I highly recommend doing that legwork in advance. Because taking a few hours out to write down how far it is to get to certain places, knowing that I'm going to increase my driving by 2 or 3 minutes per week for the next 90 days, it's so easy. Right now, I can walk over to my poster, knowing that this week is 12 minutes. We can say, okay, so where can Danielle drive this week? 12 minutes will take me as far as West Hills, Chinook Center, Crossroads Market is 13 minutes, North Hill Mall is 13 minutes. If I look down over here, oh, those places are too far away. Places like Nose Hill Park is 20 minutes away. Spalumbo's and Inglewood is 16 minutes. But I have it all there, which is making my life so much easier. I feel like it's similar to if you know you want to do an early morning workout, then you want to make your lunch the night before. You want to put your workout clothes out or have your bag packed. When I know that I'm going to go to the swimming pool, that's the other thing I'm doing. Going to the pool minimum twice a week right now in my first 30 days to do my knee exercises and increase my exercises in general. But when you prepare in advance, you are setting yourself up for success. I don't have to think about it. It's already done. I know there are some people, and this would never work for me, only have black and white, for example, in their wardrobe, and it just makes life so much easier. Pick out a t-shirt, pick out a pair of pants, easy peasy. I like color too much, but again, putting your outfit out the night before, choosing what you're going to wear in advance, having things laid out, having things ready. That's how I feel about this poster. It has it laid out. What am I doing right now? And then there's a calendar every day. Okay, what time did I wake? But I don't even have to worry about it because every day I'm getting up at the same time. If I wake up a bit earlier, I take the time to do an hour and a half, 30 minutes of meditation. I'm also not napping. I have been napping for years. And a lot of this goes against almost like the story of who I tell myself that I am, because I don't wear a watch. If I don't know what time it is, my normal circadian rhythm will get me into bed at 1 a.m. That has been happening for years. But has that story that I tell myself about myself been holding me back? Either way, it's irrelevant and it doesn't matter because I am committed to a new story. I am committed to the story of someone who tried and tried and tried and felt like she did what she was told, and she found something that could work, that has worked for many people. And Dr. Michael Collins said on one of the podcasts that he can help almost everyone, but for some people, it does make them worse. I am aware, and although I'm not napping, I'm making sure that I do give myself some time in the day for downtime. I said to my physio today, it's not like I'm putting myself in fluorescent lights and a loud environment from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, but I am entering the world with confidence and a spirit of, I am going to feel anxious and I'm going to be okay. Because when the doctor explained how much the vestibular system and the nervous system is linked, it all makes sense. When I look back on the pattern of my pain flares and migraines, I also saw a couple of times where I totally flew off the handle. I will say, I once had a argument, I don't know what you want to call it, with my younger brother. Have never had one before and never had one since. And it was at a time when my brain and my entire system was on super high alert. And I can see the link between the vestibular system and my nervous system in a way that nobody ever explained it to me before. And a key reason why, even though I've done vestibular exercises and sleep training and different exercises before to quote unquote get better, one of the reasons why they never would have worked was because for nearly a decade, I was in a court case where you are under stress because there is a fear you are going to lose your home. I already stopped being able to do my job. And actually, that reminds me, something I miss saying is that Dr. Michael Collins talks about, don't talk about your symptoms. Don't write down your symptoms. Think about recovery time. And I'll talk more next week about how it's going. But again, imagine being in a court case for 9 years when people don't believe what you're sharing. They don't believe that you're experiencing what you're experiencing, and you're asked to track your symptoms every single day. So guess what happens when you write down your symptoms? You write them down with a fierceness. You feel them more deeply because people don't believe you. And I would highly recommend reading the book, Run Towards the Danger. She has some incredible stories, heartbreaking stories, stories of courage and resilience. But please, if you know anyone who has experienced a concussion or post-concussion syndrome, if you know me, please read the last chapter. Because although her experience isn't exactly like mine, enough of it resonates that I still, in this moment, feel emotional. Because I feel like if you read that, I will be seen. And I cannot thank her enough. And I cannot thank you enough for your listening, for your support, for being here for my Get My Life Back journey. And I said to the physio this morning, and I said to the physio last week, because I have two, it might not work. But just like the first episode of this podcast is called, you never know if you don't try. So this is me trying. This is me sharing. And next episode, I will share more about how it's going. I will link in the podcast notes the podcast that I listened to with Dr. Michael or Mickey Collins, PhD, and Peter Attia, who's also a doctor. I was able to hear it for free on YouTube. It was episode 263, Concussions and Head Trauma, Symptoms, Treatment, and Recovery. I will also put a link to the book Explain Pain by David Butler and Lorimer Mosley. I remember being given that book over a decade ago when I was at physio, recovering and recuperating. And I want you to know that whatever new goal you're taking on, whatever new different path that you're choosing to take to experience more wellness, to experience more joy, to feel more aligned within your own body, I am cheering you on. I believe in you. And I believe that with the right supports of friends and family and medical experts, we all can experience more wellness, feeling better and better and better. But it starts with us. It starts with me. It starts with you. And a commitment to health and wellness. And I am doing it, and I am committed to it, and I cannot wait to share my continued journey with you. So thankful for you. Sending love, sending peace, and sending the unending belief that I have that I can do it and you can do it. Just got to believe in yourself. Sending love until we meet again.